In the days when the judges ruled Israel, a man named Nahshon lived in the hill country of Ephraim with his wife Adinah and their 2 sons. Nahshon was a brave warrior who fought valiantly to defend his people whenever raiders attacked their villages. But even Nahshon's courage could not stop the famine that ravaged the land after the seasonal rains failed yet again. With no crops to harvest and their flocks dwindling, Nahshon made the difficult decision to relocate his family to the lush Jordan Valley. They packed their meager belongings and set out, leaving behind the only home they had ever known. As they journeyed through the wilderness under the scorching sun, Adinah clutched her swaddled infant son Ethan to her breast, while their older boy Levi dragged his feet in the sand, too weary to take another step. Nahshon scanned the desolate horizon, praying silently for a sign of hope. Suddenly, a glint of bronze flashed in the distance, catching Nahshon's eye. Intrigued, he veered off course to investigate with his family in tow. As they drew nearer, they discerned the source, a polished bronze serpent coiled atop a wooden pole thrust into the ground. "What is it, Papa?" asked Levi, his curiosity temporarily overcoming his fatigue. Nahshon's mind raced with recognition. "Why, it's the bronze serpent Moses crafted in the desert long ago. My grandfather once told me the story, how our ancestors spoke against God and Moses, so the Lord sent venomous snakes among the people as punishment. But when they cried out in repentance, God instructed Moses to fashion this bronze serpent. Anyone bitten could look upon it and live." Adinah shuddered. What a strange and wondrous thing, this image that both condemns and heals. Shifting Ethan in her arms, she murmured, "Sometimes I feel the bite of despair in my heart, like deadly venom. Would that I could look upon God's mercies and be renewed with hope." Levi reached out a tentative hand to touch the gleaming serpent, marveling at the intricacies of its scales. Nahshon gently pulled him back. "We mustn't tarry long. There may yet be desert vipers lurking nearby." Nodding reluctantly, Levi took a last wistful look at the serpent before turning away. But as the family started to leave, a voice called out from behind the shimmering bronze coils, "Wait, please, stay a moment." Nahshon whirled around, instinctively shielding his wife and sons. To their amazement, the serpent was speaking, its eyes gleaming with uncanny intelligence. "Forgive me," it said, its sibilant voice surprisingly mellifluous. "I did not mean to startle you. It's just that I so rarely have the chance to talk with anyone. Being stuck on a pole in the middle of nowhere doesn't exactly encourage scintillating conversation." Nahshon stared at the serpent warily. "Are you real? Or has the sun addled my brains?" The serpent made a sound like dry laughter, its coils shifting. "Oh, I'm quite real, I assure you. Once I was an ordinary snake, or as ordinary as a supernaturally crafted bronze serpent can be, I suppose. But after all these years, the residual power of Moses' blessing and the countless gazes of faith from the Israelites healed by looking upon me, well, it changed me, gave me awareness, understanding, even speech. But you were meant to be a symbol, a reminder of God's power and mercy," Adinah stammered. "And so I still am," the serpent replied. "Never doubt that. My existence is inextricably tied to the Lord's purposes. But like any good symbol, I am complex, multifaceted. I invite contemplation and wrestle with deep questions. My bronze form may be static, but my meaning is living and active." Nahshon nodded slowly. "Like the word of God itself, sharper than any double-edged sword, able to discern the thoughts and intentions of the heart." The serpent looked at Nahshon with something like approval. "Well spoken. You have wisdom beyond your years, young man." "What is your name?" asked Adinah, hesitantly drawing nearer. "I am Adinah, and this is my husband Nahshon, and our sons Levi and Ethan." The bronze serpent dipped its head. "Well met, Adinah and family. You may call me Nehushtan, a name I took for myself long ago after I realized what I had become. It means a thing of bronze." Levi piped up, "Nehushtan, if you can talk, why don't you call for help to get down off that pole? Aren't you tired of being stuck up there?" The serpent chuckled. "Aren't you a precocious lad? But I'll let you in on a secret. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This pole isn't my prison, it's my purpose. I am a symbol and an invitation. The Israelites need me to stay put." Nahshon furrowed his brow. "But why would anyone need to look upon you now? It's been generations since Moses made you. There are no plagues of vipers anymore." Nehushtan grew pensive. "Are there not? Perhaps they take different forms now. The venom of bitterness, the sting of envy, the poison of faithlessness. Serpents of the heart. People wander through the wastelands of their lives, beset by all manner of spiritual snakes. They need an antidote, a beacon of hope to fix their eyes upon. Adina cradled Ethan close. I think I understand. Life can feel so hard, like we're wandering in endless desert. Grief, pain, loss, IT quote, S easy to lose heart. We need a reminder to look up, to cast our gaze on God's deliverance. The serpent's bronze eyes shone. Yes, you perceive the heart of it. I am not the power, but I point to the one who is. I'm a signpost for weary travelers, a glimpse of grace glimmering on the horizon. Sometimes that's what we need most, a focal point for our faith. Nahshon looked at the serpent with a mixture of wonder and puzzlement. I am amazed by your insight, Nehushtan. Truly, God works in mysterious ways, to use even the image of a serpent, the very creature that deceived our first parents, to now bring healing and revelation. Nehushtan's coils rippled thoughtfully. The Lord excels at bringing forth redemption from the most unlikely sources. He turns curses into blessings, instruments of evil into agents of good. In his hands, what was once a symbol of sin and death can become an emblem of restoration and new life. Adina smiled softly. Like bronze refined in the furnace, God takes our brokenness and fashions it into something beautiful. Nehushtan bobbed his head in affirmation. Oh, I like that. I think I'll use that line the next time I have a chat with a passing philosopher or poet. You have a gift with words, Adina. Levi tugged on his father's robe. Papa, can we stay and talk to Nehushtan a little longer? I want to hear more stories. Nahshon glanced at the sun sinking lower in the sky. I'm afraid we must press on, son. We still have a ways to go before nightfall. The serpent flicked its tongue. Your father is right, Levi, but perhaps we'll meet again someday, if your journeys bring you back this way. The desert has a way of drawing people into its mysteries. Adina stepped forward and placed a hand on the serpent's bronze head. Thank you, Nehushtan, for your words, your wisdom, for helping me see our struggles in a new light. The serpent leaned into her touch. It is I who should be thanking you, dear Adina, for stopping to talk to an old snake, for listening and sharing your heart. You've reminded me of why I'm here, to invite others into the ongoing story of God's redemption. Nahshon shouldered his pack and gathered his family. We are grateful for this encounter, Nehushtan. May the Lord continue to use you to bring hope and healing. With final farewells, the family set off again, their steps a bit lighter than before. As the serpent watched them go, it whispered an ancient benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Long after they had disappeared into the shimmering desert mirages, Nehushtan pondered the meeting. It marveled at the mysterious ways of the Almighty, how a chance conversation could reawaken purpose and infuse even a bronze serpent with new understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon and stars pierced the vast indigo sky, the serpent reflected on the long legacy of God's people, the triumphs and the trials, the wilderness wanderings and the glimpses of grace. Through it all, the Lord wove his redemptive purposes, shaping beauty from brokenness and beckoning his beloved to fix their eyes on his eternal promises. Nehushtan settled in for another long night on its bronze coil, content in the knowledge that it had a sacred part to play in the unfolding story of God's unfailing love. And as the constellations wheeled overhead, the serpent offered a silent prayer for all those still journeying through the wilderness, that they would look up and live. Weeks passed into months as Nahshon and his family pressed on towards the Jordan Valley. They stopped at tiny villages along the way to replenish their supplies, trading Adina's skillfully woven baskets for grain, dried fruits, and cured meats. As they shared meals around flickering campfires under star-strewn skies, Nahshon regaled his family with tales of the tribal heroes of old, mighty Gideon and his valiant 300 men, fleet-footed Jephthah and his tragic daughter, the lion-hearted judge Deborah, who rallied the people to victory. Levi listened spellbound, his eyes wide in the dancing firelight. Do you think I could grow up to be a hero like them someday, Papa? Nahshon tousled his son's hair. Of course you could, my brave boy. But remember, true heroism isn't just about great deeds on the battlefield. It's about living with integrity, keeping faith with God and family, day in and day out. That's the kind of valor that counts most. Adina smiled at her husband, Ethan sleeping contentedly in her lap. Your father speaks wisdom, Levi. There's honor to be found in the quiet, ordinary acts of loyalty and love. Tending the sheep, working the loom, raising children to walk in the ways of the Lord. That's the stuff of real courage. As the family journeyed on, they encountered other travelers, merchants with laden camels, nomadic herders driving their flocks, clans relocating in search of greener pastures. They swapped stories around shared evening fires, trading news and gleaning wisdom from their fellow sojourners. One night, as the family prepared to bed down, a wizened old man approached their camp, leaning heavily on a walking stick. Nahshon welcomed the stranger, offering him a place by the fire and a portion of their simple meal. The old man accepted gratefully, sinking down onto a rough woolen blanket. Many thanks, kind sir. I am Abner, a scribe and storyteller from the hill country of Judah. I've been walking these roads many a year, gathering tales and teachings to share with the people. Levi perked up. Ooh, we love stories. Do you know any about the prophet Moses or the great judges of Israel? Abner's eyes twinkled. I know a tale or two, young master. But some of the most important stories are the ones not everyone has heard. The quiet stories of faith and fortitude that don't always make it into the official histories. Nahshon leaned forward. We'd be honored to hear such a story, Abner. The old scribe stroked his beard, considering. Very well. This is a tale from the time of the judges, when a famine much like this one gripped the land. There was a man named Elimelech who lived in Bethlehem with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons. When the famine grew severe, they journeyed to the land of Moab to find food. But there in that foreign country, tragedy struck. Elimelech died, leaving Naomi a widow. Her sons married Moabite women, but then they too were taken by illness, leaving no heirs. Bereft, Naomi decided to return to her homeland. She urged her daughters-in-law to remain in Moab and find new husbands, but one of them, Ruth, refused to leave her side. Don't urge me to abandon you or to turn back from following you, Ruth told her mother-in-law. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Adina wiped a tear from her eye. What a beautiful declaration of love and loyalty. Abner nodded. Indeed. So Naomi and Ruth journeyed back to Bethlehem, 2 widows alone in the world. Ruth gleaned grain in the fields to provide for them, catching the eye of a wealthy landowner named Boaz. To make a long story short, Boaz ended up marrying Ruth, and they had a son named Obed, who became the grandfather of King David himself. Nahshon's eyes widened. Remarkable. So Ruth, a Moabite woman, became an ancestor of Israel's greatest king? More than that, Abner replied. Jewish tradition holds that she was also the ancestress of the Messiah who will come someday to redeem Israel. A hush fell over the little group as they pondered the significance of the story. Levi broke the silence. But what does it all mean, Abner? Why is Ruth's story so important? The old scribe smiled gently. Now that's the real question, isn't it? I believe Ruth's tale teaches us many things. The value of steadfast love, the way God works through unexpected people and places, how he weaves even tragedy and loss into his great story of redemption. But perhaps most of all, Ruth reminds us that true faithfulness often looks like ordinary, everyday loyalty. Quietly clinging to hope, doing the next right thing, carrying on with love even when God's purposes aren't clear. Day by day, one foot in front of the other, trusting that the Lord is at work in the mundane moments. You see, not all heroes wield swords or lead armies. Some simply walk alongside the lonely, the grieving, the displaced. They choose love over self-interest, devotion over comfort. In a world that prizes fame and glory, they embody a different kind of greatness. Nahshon nodded thoughtfully. Like you said, the quiet stories of faith and fortitude, the ones that might escape notice in their own time, but echo across eternity. Abner's eyes shone in the firelight. Well put, my friend. Well put indeed. He stretched and yawned, joints popping. But now these old bones are telling me it's time to rest. Thank you for your hospitality and kind listening. May the Lord bless you and keep you on your journey. The family bid Abner good night and settled into their bedrolls, minds buzzing with the scribe's words. As Adina drifted off to sleep, cradling Ethan close, she whispered a prayer into the night. Lord, give me a heart like Ruth's, steady and true, finding faithfulness in the small things. May I too play a part in your great story, even if I don't see the full pattern. Miles turned to weeks as the family pressed on, the rugged hills of Ephraim giving way to the lush Jordan Valley. At last they crested a final ridge and gazed out at their new homeland, a patchwork of green fields, silvery olive groves, and neat mud-brick dwellings. Nahshon raised his weathered hands to the sky. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive and sustained us to reach this season. As the family made their way down into the valley, they were met by a delegation from the nearby village. A tall, dignified man with silver in his beard stepped forward, arms spread wide. Welcome, travelers. I am Eleazar, head of the village council. We heard of your coming from the merchants who passed this way. In truth, we have long prayed for new families to join our community, to help work the land and rebuild what the famine has broken. If you wish it, there is a place for you here. Nahshon clasped arms with Eleazar. Your kindness moves us deeply. I am Nahshon, and this is my wife Adina, our sons Levi and Ethan. We would be honored to make our home among you and contribute what we can to the common good. And so the family settled in the Jordan Valley, embracing the rhythms of their new life. Nahshon joined the other men in the fields, tilling and planting, while Adina set up her loom in their small house, weaving garments and blankets to trade. Levi made fast friends with the village boys, roaming the hills and splashing in the Jordan River, while little Ethan took his first toddling steps in the sunny courtyard. As the seasons turned and life blossomed anew, Nahshon couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought them here. The grief and loss, the uncertainty and fear, and yet, through it all, the steadfast goodness of God, leading them step by step. There were still moments of struggle, of course, times when the ache of displacement hit hard, when memories of their old life brought tears. But always, there was the love of family and community to lean on, the faith that they were part of a story so much grander than they could grasp. And then there were the unexpected graces, the glimpses of redemption woven into their days. Like the afternoon Levi came tearing into the house, eyes alight with wonder. Mama, Papa, come see. The crocuses are blooming in the valley, a whole carpet of purple and gold. It's like a T-S, like hope breaking through the ground. Or the day the rains returned after a long drought, drenching the parched earth. Nahshon whooped and spun Adina around in the downpour while the boys splashed in the puddles, all of them laughing in sheer astonished gratitude. And in those moments, in the beauty and the brokenness, the sorrow and the celebration, they sensed the heartbeat of a larger narrative, a love story of cosmic proportions. The great redemption story of the ages, the one in which each of their own plots and subplots found meaning. Adina felt it as she rocked Ethan to sleep, singing the lullabies of her childhood. Nahshon tasted it in the bread broken with friends around the village fire. Levi heard its echoes in the words of the Torah, chanted in the little synagogue on Shabbat. They carried it in their blood and bones, this knowing that they were characters in God's great drama of healing and hope. As the years flowed by like the Jordan's swift current, Nahshon sometimes found himself thinking back to their chance meeting with Nehushtan in the wilderness. How a bronze serpent on a pole had spoken truth and blessing over their journey, reframing their hardships as sacred invitations. And he realized that this too was part of the story, the way God used the most unlikely encounters and obscure objects to awaken purpose and impart wisdom. A burning bush, a bronze serpent, a Moabite widow, a baby in a manger. The Almighty was always subverting expectations, always using the marginal and the humble to topple thrones and transform hearts. Nahshon shared these musings with Adina one evening as they sat hand in hand, watching the sunset paint the hills with rose and gold. She smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. It's like we're all threads in this vast, intricate tapestry, each of us a unique color and texture. On our own, we can't see the whole picture, but God, He weaves us together, blending the light and the dark strands, and creates a masterpiece beyond imagining. Nahshon nodded slowly. The story isn't over yet, love. There's so much still to be revealed, so many chapters yet unwritten. Our thread is part of it, and our children's, and all who come after. An eternal story of redemption, the grandest of all tales. And so the family lived and loved, worked and worshipped, their days woven into the great grand narrative of God's unfailing hest love. Through the ages, through the laughter and the tears, through the long-awaited Messiah and beyond, the story went on, ever ancient, ever new. For they were people of the story, of the bronze serpent and the kinsman redeemer, of the manger and the empty tomb. And that story was the truest thing they knew, the solid ground beneath their wandering feet. It held them fast in the darkest nights and broke them open to joy like a desert blooming after rain. So they clung to it, this story of stories. They passed it on to their children and their children's children, a legacy of faith and hope. And as they did, they found their own place within it, not as mere watchers or bystanders, but as beloved characters, each with a sacred role to play.